Rafael Nadal just ended his silence, and he held absolutely nothing back after whispers from Roger Federer's inner circle began spreading that Alex Eala had overshadowed Federer's own protege, putting the carefully constructed legacy of his hand-picked successor at risk. Nobody anticipated that the King of Clay would step forward the way he did, but Nadal did what Nadal has always done. He showed up when it counted most. This is the story they don't want you to hear. There was a rivalry that existed long before the players themselves grasped what it truly meant. For more than 2 decades, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal divided the tennis world straight down the middle. 2 philosophies, 2 personalities, 2 generations colliding on the same court again and again, until the sport itself was transformed by the friction between them. Federer, the Swiss maestro, the embodiment of grace, of elegance, of tennis performed like poetry, and Nadal, the Spaniard from Majorca, who turned sheer determination into artistry and made suffering appear like a form of strength. They faced each other 40 times. Nadal led the head-to-head record 24-16, but statistics never captured the complete story between these 2 men. What they shared ran deeper than rivalry. It was a mutual admiration that only the truly elite can fully appreciate. And when both men retired, in Federer in 2022 and Nadal in 2024, the tennis world held its breath in anticipation of the question that always follows the departure of legends: who comes next? Federer found his answer in João Fina, the 18-year-old Brazilian sensation who represented On Running, a sportswear brand co-owned by Federer himself. Fina had captured hearts with his ability, having been crowned US Open Junior Champion in 2023 and generating significant buzz at the 2025 Australian Open, advancing to the second round after defeating Andrei Rublev. Federer didn't merely sponsor him, he genuinely believed in him, promoted him publicly, and made him the centerpiece of a future he was quietly engineering from behind the scenes. Nadal's answer was entirely different, and it had been taking shape for far longer. Alex Eala had been training at the Rafa Nadal Academy since she was just 13 years old. The left-handed Filipina from Quezon City had arrived in Majorca as a teenager, carrying something impossible to measure, a hunger that matched her raw talent. Nadal watched her develop. He sent congratulatory messages during her breakthrough moments. He tracked her ranking advances the way only a true mentor would. 2 legends, 2 chosen successors, and a world that was about to discover these parallel journeys could not remain parallel forever. But here is what nobody was prepared for. What unfolds when one of those chosen successors becomes so prominent so rapidly that it begins making the other look like a footnote? Because that is precisely what started happening in 2025. And when the quiet tension finally found a voice, things became very complicated very quickly. To understand why this controversy erupted the way it did, you first have to understand just how extraordinary Alex Eala's ascent truly was. This was not a gradual climb up the rankings. This was an explosion. She became the first Filipina to claim a WTA singles title, break into the top 100 in the world, and reach a WTA 1000 semifinal all within the same season. She concluded 2025 with a career-high ranking of number 50 in the world. But the numbers fail to capture what actually unfolded. The numbers don't show you the crowds. At the Miami Open in March 2025, Eala didn't just reach the semifinals, she dismantled giants along the way, upsetting Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek en route to the Miami Open last 4, ultimately falling to Jessica Pegula. She defeated the Australian Open champion. She defeated a former world number 1. She accomplished all of it as a qualifier. And the Filipino community in Miami, along with millions watching from phones and laptops scattered across an archipelago of 7,000 islands, completely lost their collective minds. Then came the US Open. The third set was pure theater. Eala trailed 1 game to 5 but refused to surrender. She launched a fearless comeback, clawing her way back to 4 games to 5. Then came the controversy. At the net, she flicked a ball, and it was unclear whether her racket had crossed the tape. Chair umpire Kader Nuni reviewed the footage and ruled in Eala's favor. Her opponent, Clara Towson, erupted. The crowd erupted. And somewhere in the chaos of that moment, a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines won her first Grand Slam main draw match, collapsed onto the court in disbelief, and made the entire world stop and watch. A Dubai-based tennis referee who had witnessed Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, and Agassi all grace that court remarked of Eala's matches that the experience was something entirely different. Ticket sales at the Dubai Tennis Championships surged 48% year-over-year, driven almost entirely by Eala's presence. Former professional Steve Johnson, appearing on the Nothing Major podcast, was asked whether Eala was the biggest draw in women's tennis. His response was immediate: yes. And where was Fana during all of this? Working, grinding, doing everything right, but that impossibly bright and impossibly loud spotlight was following Eala everywhere she went, and in the corridors of the tennis world, that imbalance was beginning to ignite conversations that should have remained private. Pay close attention here, because this is the moment the story takes a turn. It was during a promotional event in late 2025, centered around Federer's upcoming Hall of Fame induction in 2026, that the Swiss legend sat down for an extended interview. The conversation was warm and nostalgic until a journalist introduced the subject of the next generation of stars. Fana was mentioned, and Federer smiled. Then Eala's name entered the room. The comment Federer made was not shouted, it was not an outburst. It was in fact delivered with a kind of measured precision that made it sting even more deeply. He suggested, carefully and diplomatically, but unmistakably, that the overwhelming media coverage surrounding Eala had become increasingly difficult for other emerging stars to receive their deserved recognition, that the coverage had grown unbalanced, that players like Fana, who were equally deserving of attention, were being overlooked because one player had captured what he described as a phenomenon rooted in nationalism rather than tennis merit. The internet did not pause for context. The internet never does. Within hours, the phrase nationalism rather than tennis merit was clipped, shared, quoted, and reacted to approximately 10 million times across platforms. Filipino supporters, already the most organized and passionate tennis fan base on the planet, mobilized instantly. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Federer's name, once spoken with near universal reverence, was suddenly trending for all the wrong reasons, and the question echoing everywhere was the same. Would anyone from inside the sport speak up? Would anyone come to her defense? On November 19, 2025, exactly 1 year after his final professional match at the Davis Cup Finals, Rafael Nadal picked up a racket for the first time since retiring. He returned to the court at the Rafa Nadal Academy, and for his first practice partner, he chose Alexandra Eala, the current WTA world number 50. The timing was no coincidence. Nadal is not a man who does things by accident. He posted the session on social media with the caption, "1 year later, it felt great to be back on a tennis court. It was great to practice with you, Eala. Next time, I will be stronger." Eala responded, "Back like you never left." Simple words, but in the context of everything swirling around her name at that moment, they landed like a declaration. Because Nadal didn't simply hit tennis balls with Eala that day. He stood beside her, publicly, visibly, and unmistakably in a world where influential men often chose neutrality to protect their own legacy. Nadal chose a side. His side was the 20-year-old girl from the Philippines who had trained at his academy since childhood, who had carried his academy's name across the globe and given it a new meaning. That gesture says everything. This story is not really about assigning fault. It's not really about Federer versus Nadal or Fana versus Eala. It's about a sport standing at a crossroads, deciding to embrace what it is becoming or resist it out of nostalgia for what it once was. Eala did not manufacture her fan base. She earned it one improbable victory at a time. And the fact that two of the greatest players in history are now publicly aligned on opposing sides of her story proves only one thing: she is already too significant to be ignored. So, here is the question we leave you with, and we want your answer in the comments right now. Is Alex Eala already the most important player in tennis today? Not the best, but the most important, because those are two very different things, and the space between them may be precisely where the future of the sport is being decided. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, and share your thoughts below. Was Nadal right to defend Eala? Did Federer cross a line? Let the debate begin.